Chapter 4. Today has been an absurd, grotesque, ridiculous day. Now it is 11 o'clock at night. I am sitting in my little cupboard of a room, recalling it. It began with my having to go to roulette to play for Polina Alexandrovna. I took the 160 Friedrichsdor, but on two conditions. First, that I would not go halves. That is, if I won, I would take nothing for myself. And secondly, that in the evening Polina should explain to me why she needed to win, and how much money. I can't in any case suppose that it is simply for the sake of money. Evidently the money is needed, and as quickly as possible, for some particular object. She promised to explain, and I set off. In the gambling hall the crowd was awful. How insolent and how greedy they all were. I forced my way into the middle and stood near the croupier. Then I began timidly experimenting, staking 2 or 3 coins at a time. Meanwhile I kept quiet and looked on. It seemed to me that calculation meant very little, and had by no means the importance attributed to it by some players. They sit with papers before them scrawled over in pencil, note the strokes, reckon, deduce the chances, calculate, finally stake, and lose exactly as we simple mortals who play without calculations. On the other hand, I drew one conclusion which I believe to be correct. That is, though there is no system, there really is a sort of order in the sequence of casual chances, and that, of course, is very strange. For instance, it happens that after the 12 middle numbers come the 12 later numbers. Twice, for instance, it turns up on the 12 last numbers and passes to the 12 first numbers. After falling on the 12 first numbers, it passes again to numbers in the middle third, turns up 3 or 4 times in succession on numbers between 13 and 24, and again passes to numbers in the last third. Then, after turning up 2 numbers between 25 and 36, it passes to a number among the first 12, turns up once again on a number among the first third, and again passes for 3 strokes in succession to the middle numbers, and in that way goes on for an hour and a half or 2 hours. 1, 3, and 2. 1, 3, and 2. It's very amusing. One day or one morning, for instance, red will be followed by black and back again almost without any order, shifting every minute, so that it never turns up red or black for more than 2 or 3 strokes in succession. Another day or another evening there will be nothing but red over and over again, turning up, for instance, more than 22 times in succession, and so for a whole day. A great deal of this was explained to me by Mr. Astley, who spent the whole morning at the tables but did not once put down a stake. As for me, I lost every farthing very quickly. I staked straight off 20 Friedrichsdor on even and won. Staked again and again won, and went on like that 2 or 3 times. I imagine I must have had about 400 Friedrichsdor in my hands in about 5 minutes. At that point I ought to have gone away, but a strange sensation rose up in me, a sort of defiance of fate, a desire to challenge it, to put out my tongue at it. I laid down the largest stake allowed, 4,000 gulden, and lost it. Then, getting hot, I pulled out all I had left, staked it on the same number, and lost again, after which I walked away from the table as though I were stunned. I could not even grasp what had happened to me, and did not tell Polina Alexandrovna of my losing till just before dinner. I spent the rest of the day sauntering in the park. At dinner I was again in an excited state, just as I had been 3 days before. The Frenchman and Mademoiselle Blanche were dining with us again. It appeared that Mademoiselle Blanche had been in the gambling hall that morning and had witnessed my exploits. This time she addressed me, it seemed, somewhat attentively. The Frenchman set to work more directly and asked me, was it my own money I had lost? I fancy he suspects Polina. In fact, there is something behind it. I lied at once and said it was. The general was extremely surprised. Where had I got such a sum? I explained that I had begun with 10 Friedrichsdor, that after 6 or 7 times staking successfully on equal chances, I had 500 or 600 gulden, and that afterwards I had lost it all on 2 turns. All that, of course, sounded probable. As I explained this, I looked at Polina, but I could distinguish nothing from her face. She let me lie, however, and did not set it right. From this I concluded that I had to lie and conceal that I was in collaboration with her. In any case, I thought to myself, she is bound to give me an explanation, and promised me this morning to reveal something. I expected the general would have made some remark to me, but he remained mute. I noticed, however, signs of disturbance and uneasiness in his face. Possibly in his straitened circumstances it was simply painful to him to hear that such a pile of gold had come into, and within a quarter of an hour had passed out of, the hands of such a reckless fool as me. I suspect that he had a rather hot encounter with the Frenchman yesterday. They were shut up together, talking for a long time. The Frenchman went away seeming irritated and came to see the general again early this morning, probably to continue the conversation of the previous day. Hearing what I had lost, the Frenchman observed bitingly, even spitefully, that one ought to have more sense. He added, I don't know why, that though a great many Russians gamble, Russians were not, in his opinion, well qualified even for gambling. "To my mind," said I, "roulette is simply made for Russians." And when at my challenge the Frenchman laughed contemptuously, I observed that I was, of course, right, for to speak of the Russians as gamblers was abusing them far more than praising them, and so I might be believed. "On what do you base your opinion?" asked the Frenchman. "On the fact that the faculty of amassing capital has, with the progress of history, taken a place, and almost the foremost place, among the virtues and merits of the civilized man of the West. The Russian is not only incapable of amassing capital, but dissipates it in a reckless and unseemly way. Nevertheless, we Russians need money too," I added, "and consequently we are very glad and very eager to make use of such means as roulette, for instance, in which one can grow rich all at once, in 2 hours, without work. That's very fascinating to us, and since we play badly, recklessly, without taking trouble, we usually lose." "That's partly true," observed the Frenchman complacently. "No, it is not true, and you ought to be ashamed to speak like that of your country," observed the general, sternly and impressively. "Excuse me," I answered, "I really don't know which is more disgusting, Russian unseemliness or the German faculty of accumulation by honest toil." "What an unseemly idea!" exclaimed the general. "What a Russian idea!" exclaimed the Frenchman. I laughed. I had an intense desire to provoke them. "Well, I should prefer to dwell all my life in a Kirghiz tent," I cried, "than bow down to the German idol." "What idol?" cried the general, beginning to be angry in earnest. "The German faculty for accumulating wealth. I've not been here long, but yet all I have been able to observe and verify revolts my Tatar blood. My God, I don't want any such virtue. I succeeded yesterday in making a round of 8 miles, and it's all exactly as in the edifying German picture books. There is here in every house a Vater, horribly virtuous and extraordinarily honest. So honest that you are afraid to go near him. I can't endure honest people whom one is afraid to go near. Every such German Vater has a family, and in the evening they read improving books aloud. Elms and chestnut trees rustle over the house. The sun is setting, there is a stork on the roof, and everything is extraordinarily practical and touching. Don't be angry, General, let me tell it in a touching style. I remember how my father used to read similar books to my mother and me under the lime trees in the garden, so I am in a position to judge. And in what complete bondage and submission every such family is here. They all work like oxen and all save money like Jews. Suppose the Vater has saved up so many gulden and is reckoning on giving his son a trade or a bit of land. To do so, he gives his daughter no dowry, and she becomes an old maid. To do so, the youngest son is sold into bondage or into the army, and the money is added to the family capital. That is actually done here. I've been making inquiries. All this is done from nothing but honesty, from such intense honesty that the younger son who is sold believes that he is sold from nothing but honesty. And that is the ideal when the victim himself rejoices at being led to the sacrifice. What more? Why, the elder son is no better off. He has an Amalia and their hearts are united, but they can't be married because the pile of gulden is not large enough. They, too, wait with perfect morality and good faith, and go to the sacrifice with a smile. Amalia's cheeks grow thin and hollow. At last, in 20 years, their prosperity is increased. The gulden have been honestly and virtuously accumulating. The Vater gives his blessing to the 40-year-old son and his Amalia of 35, whose chest has grown hollow and whose nose has turned red. With that he weeps, reads them a moral sermon, and dies. The eldest son becomes himself a virtuous Vater and begins the same story over again. In that way, in 50 or 70 years, the grandson of the first Vater really has a considerable capital, and he leaves it to his son, and he to his, and he to his, till in 5 or 6 generations one of them is a Baron Rothschild or goodness knows who. Come, isn't that a majestic spectacle? 100 or 200 years of continuous toil, patience, intelligence, honesty, character, determination, prudence, the stork on the roof. What more do you want? Why, there's nothing loftier than that, and from that standpoint they are beginning to judge the whole world and to punish the guilty. That is, any who are ever so little unlike them. Well, so that's the point. I would rather waste my substance in the Russian style or grow rich at roulette. I don't care to be Goppa and company in 5 generations. I want money for myself, and I don't look upon myself as something subordinate to capital and necessary to it. I know that I have been talking awful nonsense, but never mind. Such are my convictions.
I don't know whether there is much truth in what you have been saying, said the general thoughtfully. But I do know you begin to give yourself insufferable airs as soon as you are permitted to forget yourself in the least.
As his habit was, he broke off without finishing. If our general began to speak of anything in the slightest degree more important than his ordinary everyday conversation, he never finished his sentences. The Frenchman listened carelessly, with rather wide-open eyes. He had scarcely understood anything of what I had said. Polina gazed with haughty indifference. She seemed not to hear my words or anything else that was said that day at table.